2019, England and Australia both smashed aside the All Blacks. Commentators somehow went a full World Cup without once calling Namibia Nambia, and Yohan Uche did this. But somewhere in amongst this salute by Yohan Uche and this other salute by Yohan Uche and this salute by Yohan Uche and this other salute by Yohan Uche and this salute by Yohan Uche, how many? Oh, this salute by Yohan Uche, and he saluted this time as Yohan Uche saluting here, and this salute by Yohan Uche, and oh my god, how many times is this scraggly bastard salute? I used to think some rugby was going to be played by some people. Some people played rugby this year, but apparently it was all just Yohan Uche saluting. Maybe him diving, but mostly him saluting. What was there? Did people play rugby? Was there rugby? So Yohan Uche saluting. I swear people played rugby. Maybe they did. Maybe some of it will come up in this next Squidge Award, which is for the best misc of the misc of the year, which isn't about Yohan Uche saluting. That's right. It's the best misc of the year. It's a real category. I just wanted to reward some moments from the year in rugby that didn't slot into the roundup otherwise, because we all know South Africa won the World Cup. We all know Wales won the Six Nations. Uruguay, Japan cause upsets. I've made you well aware of that over the last few days. But here instead are some little bits that I want to bring up to just wrap us up and bring us into 2020. Some contenders, and I'll do them at a fairly quick speed. This move by the Ladies Barbarians, it's utterly pointless, and I love it more than anything. I love the audacity of them to try it, to just do it, because why not? Jonathan Davis, St. Alwyn Jones, thank you mate, I love you, as the final whistle went on the Grand Slam campaign. Russia's Raimo Gaisin deliberately pissing off the entire nation of Ireland by playing like a year 11 who stole year 7's ball. It was hilarious and brilliant, and I kind of love his kicking stance as well. Look at it. Look at the way he floats, he wobbles off the ground. Rory Best nailing a conversion for the Barbars against Brazil, and the Barbars were going and playing Brazil for their 100th anniversary as well. Liam Williams laughing at Manu Tuolangi as he grabs him by the neck. Faf de Klerk really loving starting a fight with Jake Ball. Joe Marler shouting this when this ruck takes too long.
Use it, please.
Joe Marler nudging his opposite number in the tunnel. Joe Marler for the horse anecdote. Me having a game of touch in the town square in Oita at 1 a.m. after Canada v South Africa. And, you know, there's hundreds of contenders. There's so many I want to throw in. I may drop in throughout the rest of the year. I'm missing Ben Taumafina eating the entire West Island of Japan. Heem Foster and his sumptuous hair nailing this tricky conversion to put Tonga within 2 points of France. A certain Uruguay prop you know who I mean. You know which Uruguay prop I mean. You know his name. Matteo Sanguinetti. The wonderful story of a former agricultural boy who took a huge risk and left it behind in order to play rugby and found himself as the most magnificent man at the World Cup. I am, of course, talking about Juan Pedro There's so many more. I could go on for days, but I won't, because I want to take a second to talk about one particular man who international rugby is now losing. Georgia's David Kasharava, who has been a favourite of mine for about a decade now. Nicknamed the Nightmare, Kasharava is renowned as maybe one of the best defensive 13s Tier 2 rugby has ever seen. He's done almost nothing with the ball in hand over his more than 100 caps for Georgia, but he's a superb tackler, brilliant defender. And then, this year, in his final game for his country, Kasharava catches the egg thing that normally just gives him permission to do a murder on someone in a different shirt to him. And as he takes it, in the final throes of his career, Kasharava throws a dummy and he carves right through the Wallaby defence. A dummy, a sidestep, another sidestep. This video will actually be going up on David Kasharava's 35th birthday. Kasharava's been a favourite of mine for a long time. He's a player who just knows what he is and embraces that wholeheartedly. And to see him go kamikaze, who surprisingly isn't a Georgian fullback, and split apart a Tier 1 world-class defence in his final 40 minutes of rugby was glorious. And I, as such, can think of no better birthday present for a man who found his groove so late on than to award David Kasharava the Squidge Award for Best Misc of the Year. Anyway, time to move on to the most competitive category as always. It's the boys who do the real work, the true heroes, the back row of the year. I mean, who else? Quite simply, no other rugby player this year worked as hard, as much, as often as the very deserving World Player of the Year, Pieter-Steph du Toit. His body is like Stretch Armstrong had a baby with a lighthouse, and if only we could find a way to somehow harness the man's sheer engine, we'd have enough renewable energy to solve the whole worldwide crisis. The man never stopped. The sobbing shithouse wept his way through tackle after tackle, carry after carry, break after break. Peter Steph the Toy is different to most world-class players who are normally outstanding in at least one area and have an all-round game to bump them up. The Toy isn't like that. He doesn't hit the hardest, he isn't the most technically efficient or excellent at the breakdown or line-out or anything, he isn't the quickest or the strongest. He just works the hardest. No other player in World Rugby gets back up to his feet after being knocked down as quickly as him. Nobody rejoins the defensive line after making a tackle as quickly as him. No one hits another ruck right after making a tackle as often. Nobody is as proud a player as Peter Steph the Toy. I genuinely believe he could have played the World Cup final 6 times in a row and not tired. The guy is so driven, so motivated, so hard-working, and if a man like that doesn't deserve to be in this team, and more importantly, doesn't deserve to be World Player of the Year, nobody does. It's been a weird year for the All Blacks. For most sides, finishing third and only losing twice in 12 months would be pretty good going, but for them, this was unheard of. This was a national disaster. The black shirts were fitting because their entire season felt a bit like a funeral. But through the weird downers, one man absolutely shone, Ardie Savea. Savea himself has been in quite a weird place over the last few years. He's been around test level long enough that you can't describe him as promising anymore, but for a few seasons now, he'd been in a kind of state of arrested development, of still looking like he could be outstanding, but he hadn't quite yet become the player we all wanted him to become. And then 2019 happened, because there's absolutely no doubting Ardie Savea's credentials these days. A menace at the breakdown, an excellent support runner, a massive ball carrier. He has more than become everything he seemingly promised to be when he first burst onto the scene. 2019 was Ardie Savea's year, and whilst that wasn't quite enough to make it the All Blacks year as well, it's now on him to remain this player in a year in which the All Blacks will no doubt be back to being somewhat less weird. Nobody saw this coming, but for a few shining weeks during the 2019 World Cup, if you'd asked me who was the best rugby player on the planet, I'd have told you completely unequivocally it was a certain Japanese back rower by the name of Kazuki Himeno. I've always rated Himeno. He first burst through as a 20-year-old utility forward a few years ago and was being talked up already then in Japan as the heir apparent to Michael Leach, the next inspirational captain and the figurehead of Japanese rugby. But even after an outstanding Pacific Nation Cup this year, I didn't know he was that good. I don't think anyone did. Himeno was brilliant against Russia. He was superb and scored a try against Samoa. And he was once again tireless and excellent and everywhere against Scotland. I mean, he was incredible against Scotland, but his performance against Ireland might have been, for me, the best by any player in any game this year. There's an argument to be made his performance there was the greatest by any Japanese player ever. To stand out in a back row that contained fellow contenders Michael Goddamn Leach and Peter Labuschagne, as well as keeping the likes of Hendrik Tui and Amanaki Mafi out of the team, took some doing, but Himeno did more than that. He carried with not just power, but intelligence. His work at the breakdown was fantastic, and again, intelligent. His reading of the game, his reading of the opposition defence. It's difficult to still be so absolute as I was during the pool stage, so soon after his side were dismantled by a brilliant, incredible South African side on their own march to the trophy, but for a few shining weeks, Kazuki Himeno was not only deserving of being the number 8 in my team, but of the title of being the best rugby player on the entire planet. This was by some way the most competitive category, and 2 men in particular were very unlucky to miss out. Tom Curry ended this year as a promising young player who had an identical twin, playing rugby, and a surname prime for punnage. By the end of the year, he was just Tom Curry, World Player of the Year nominee. Do you know how hard it is to break out of both of those? To break out both being a twin and having a pun name? To transcend every easy joke about you? To become so good that nobody dares make those gags or mention that you have an identical twin? Now that's a breakthrough year. Tom Curry was a real toss-up here and came closer to making this team than anyone else who didn't make the actual 15. And then for the other guy, for a long time, Pablo Matera was an absolute lock. My player of the 2019 Super Rugby season and brilliant for the Rugby Championship. Matera then spent the World Cup going full Parise. And let me tell you, never go full Parise. Overwhelming talent overrun by an almighty ego, a player who looked like he kind of knew he was the side's best player. Matera took everything on his own shoulders, trying to one-man team his way out the pool stage. But ultimately, they just kind of crushed out the World Cup in the pool stage. A mostly incredible year for a man who's finally surpassed the initial promise seen, but he's going to need to rein in the overconfidence if he wants to kick on during the next World Cup cycle. Speaking of one-man teams, I'd like to nominate the entirety of the Canadian national team as a contender for Best Back Row of the Year, by which I mean Tyler Ardron, the only player from the Great White North to do anything of value over the World Cup. Juan Manuel Gaminara deserves a similar nod for embodying his country, just he was fortunate enough not to be doing it on his own. Japan's co-captains, the aforementioned Michael Leach and Peter Labachakne, were likewise outstanding over their enormously successful RWC and PNC campaigns. It almost feels harsh to not include Leach in the starting back row, but, you know, Kazuki Umeno. Billy Vanapola remains really good to a point at which it almost doesn't need saying, and Sam Underhill is getting close to that standard as well, with some brilliant performances over the World Cup. Justin Tipuric also came very close to making the team, a player who creates and embraces chaos all around him, and two of his Wales colleagues also earned mentions. Josh Navidi, brilliant, and then sorely missed once lost. And Aaron Wainwright rose to being one of the best back rowers at the World Cup, despite literally playing for the Dragons. Michael Hooper, elsewhere in that pool, played his best rugby in years at the World Cup and hauled an up and down Australian side at the pool stage almost single-handedly. Russia's Tyre Gajev was phenomenal, pulling in errata and breaking out of the rugby hipster camp just into being an outstanding tier 2 player. Vinciliato of Fiji was off the chart brilliant anytime he was allowed near a rugby ball. Georgia's unsung Beko Gadze put in one of the best individual performances of the World Cup against Australia after some standout performances earlier in the year. Jamie Ritchie shone through the Six Nations and then was one of Scotland's best performers out in Japan. And Italy once again had two standouts, Bram Stein and then, ever proving there's life beyond Sergio, prime shithouse Jake Pelledri, who broke the World Cup record for most defenders beaten in a tournament with just 2 starts. It was a trick he shared with Scotland's Hamish Watson, who broke the Six Nations record for most defenders beaten in a match within 15 minutes of coming off the bench against Wales. And finally, whilst neither were perhaps at the very height of their powers, it was so good to see David Pocock and Kieran Reid, for me, probably the 2 best players of the last decade, go out playing some really good stuff. World Rugby will be a worse place for losing the 2 of them, but I think the sheer length and breadth of this list just goes to show, as far as flankers go, we're in a very good place.
Alright lads, cheers for watching that, hope you enjoyed it. Sorry it's a bit late. Thank you as well for watching that from me as well. I managed to separate, I'm no longer a penguin. We're no longer one, you. Thank you for watching it, I hope you enjoyed it. That is the end of the Team of the Year. We finally got through them, we've got all 6 up, we now have the full 15. Thank you for watching them. I apologise if you thought it was biased against your side, and I apologise, there are some players like Dwayne Vermeulen and Sia Khaleesi here, I genuinely just forgot that there's so many to go through. I made a big comprehensive list. I tried to keep one all year, but every now and again something slips through. Every now and again there's something you can't quite get. So I apologise for that. I apologise if I missed your favourite player, and if he isn't in, that's definitely why. That's the only reason why. It is. I'm also going to say quickly, I'm going to be in Dublin over the weekend. I am going to Ireland next week. I'll be at the Munster v Ospreys game. If anyone's about, say hi. I will need somewhere to watch the Champions Cup games over the Saturday of that weekend. I'll be going to RDS for the Cast game. So if you're about, say hello. It's now time to move on to some pre-Six Nations stuff. That is the plan for the channel. I'm going to do some previews for a couple of teams in the Six Nations. They'll be coming in the next few weeks, leading into the Six Nations. I could have told you that myself, Penguin. Sorry, mate. I'm quite excited to be here. Yeah, and then we move into the Six Nations itself. It's now less than a month away. It's like less than 4 weeks away. Don't know how that's happened, but there we go. I'm going to go away, get working on those, and actually, I've realised I should probably comb my hair. Happy New Year.